Voters Candidate Forum for Washington State Legislative District 26, House Position 2. I'm Noel Higgins, the moderator, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and of Kitsap County and our co-sponsors, I welcome everyone to this virtual forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose mission for the past 100 years has been to empower informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose any candidate or political party. The League does take positions on selected government issues after member study and agreement. The League offers many candidate forums prior to the primary and general elections. These forums are especially important during the pandemic, when voters have very limited opportunity to hear and speak with candidates before ballots are cast. Anyone age 16 or older can be a member of the League of Women Voters. For more information on membership, go to our website, www.Tacoma-Pierce-County-LWV.org. Today's forum is for primary candidates for House Position 2 in Legislative District 26. The primary election is Tuesday, August 4th, after which the top two vote getters will move on to the ballot for the general election on November 3rd. The forum is being recorded and a link will be posted at the LWV, at the LWV TPC website. That's League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County. And that website is www.tacoma-piercelwv.org/2020 elections. The three candidates for this House seat in ballot order are Michelle Caldier, Joy Stanford, and Alicia Beeler. Our timekeeper is Terry Baker from the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County. She will hold up cards to let you know when you have 60 seconds remaining, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and when it is time to stop. When you see the stop card, you may finish a short sentence. Please stay on gallery view, candidates, so that you can see me and the timekeeper, Terry Baker. Please do not talk unless it's your turn. Please mute yourselves when it's not your turn to speak. The audience is on mute and cannot use the chat function. To those watching, if you have a candidate, or if you have a question for the candidates, you need to text your question. You cannot raise your hand. The chat box is not functioning, as you've already heard. Your text needs to go to 253-861-6824. Questions must be general enough that they apply to all candidates. If they are not, they will be changed or not asked. Some questions will be consolidated and may be reworded to avoid duplication. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. These will be given in ballot order. After that, the order of answering questions will rotate. All candidates will be asked all of the same questions. At the end, each candidate can make a 1-minute closing statement. So your opening 2-minute statement, please, Michelle Caldier. After Michelle, will go Joy Stanford and then Alicia Beeler. Michelle.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for attending today, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I am State Representative Michelle Caldier. I am proudly serving my third term in the 26th District. Prior to becoming a legislator, I was a nursing home dentist, a foster mother, and an affiliate professor at the University of Washington. I came down to Olympia as a citizen advocating on behalf of my nursing home patients, and I learned that one person could make a difference, which inspired me to run for office. Over the last 6 years, I have been recognized for my bipartisanship, my help with stabilizing the bridge tolls, and work to reform our foster care system. In addition, as a Republican in a very steep minority, I am one of the top Republican legislators who have passed bills and had amendments accepted. And this is due to my good working relationships in all 4 caucuses and my hard work ethic. In addition, I have worked to pass legislation to protect sexual assault survivors, to increase access to mental health services, and fully funding special education. I have a proven track record of fighting for the people and standing up against large entities, such as when I fought the pharmaceutical companies by demanding for drug pricing transparency, by fighting hospitals such as CHI Franciscan from having a monopoly in the region, and stopping insurance companies from not paying the benefits that they have promised that they would pay for. I have an open door policy, and I believe in listening to everyone's input, regardless of where they stand on the political spectrum. I am honored to be your representative, and I look forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.
Joy Stanford, 2-minute opening statement, please.
Great. Hello, everyone, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this forum for our position, and for all of you for joining tonight. My name is Joy Stanford, and I'm running to become your next state representative here in the 26th Legislative District, Position 2. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother known as Gam Gam, and I'm a healthcare and housing advocate and an educator. I come from a family of veterans. That includes my father, my husband, my father-in-law, and my oldest son. My daughter is an acupuncturist and Eastern medicine practitioner in Seattle. And my youngest son just finished his sophomore year at Boise State University and is a proud 2018 graduate of Peninsula High School. As a longtime resident of the 26th District, and with my background of service to the community, I understand what we need and we value here. I am the candidate who is committed to bringing your voice to the table to find solutions and put working families first. I believe the issues and challenges that we need to address as we push through this pandemic have real impacts on the quality of our lives. And right now, the voices of children, seniors, working families, and veterans are not being represented. I believe by coming together collectively, we can make real progress for everyone. I've been on the phone speaking with voters almost every day, and those conversations have made it clear that the residents of our district want more civility in politics and more responsiveness from our elected officials. In addition to addressing the public health and economic impacts of COVID-19 and the institutionalized racism that exists in our society, I am committed to improving our public health system, our educational system, creating affordable, safe housing, and making sure small businesses in our community are able to recover and are better prepared for a crisis in the future. I have the experience and the perspective we need to ensure that all of this happens, and I'm looking forward to earning your vote and your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Beeler, your 2-minute opening statement, please.
Hi, so I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm Alicia Beeler, and I'm the endorsed Republican in this race. I decided to run because of the incumbent's voting record. It's time to get to work on issues that have plagued the 26th and have not been addressed. The coming years need strong policy that will include our area and not just the I-5 corridor. I have several master's degrees in administration and policy, and I'm currently working on my PhD in public policy with an emphasis on social policy. My family has lived in the South Kitsap area since the 1920s. I have worked for Kitsap County in the criminal justice field for 14 years, and this is my home, and I want the best for it. As a professional, I would like to restore honor, integrity, and I promise to never lie to you. I will also never take credit for anyone else's work. Go Wolves. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we come to questions. And again, I'm reminding the audience that if you have a question, you can't raise your hand or you can't use the chat box. You need to text your question to 253-861-6824. The first candidate to answer each question will have up to 2 minutes. The other candidates will have 1 minute. to add information or comment on what we have heard. Many questions have been received from voters who pre-registered prior to the forum. Some have been edited for brevity or applicability. The order of questioning will rotate. We will start with Joy Stanford, then Alicia Beeler, and Michelle Caldier. So to Joy Stanford, within your legislative district, what do you see as the most pressing issue that needs a solution in the next session?
I see the most pressing issue is our recovery from this COVID-19 pandemic. Making sure that our small businesses are put back into good footing to make sure that they can sustain their business, making sure that we have a full recovery for our public health system, making sure we have a full recovery for our educational system. It's imperative that we make sure we can get our kids back to school. They want to get back to school, but we need to make sure we're doing it in a data-driven, science-based way so that we have less numbers increasing like we do currently around this virus. Most importantly, let's make sure that our legislative district has the economic recovery that is needed for sustainability as we move into the next year, 2021 to 2022, making sure that every family is healthy and basic needs are being met. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Beeler, you have up to 1 minute to respond to the question.
Hi, so I've got a plan to get the economy going again, and I think that's going to be the biggest issue facing us here in the 26th legislative district with the COVID recovery. So we start with a zero-based budgeting plan and start at the bottom, work our way up. That way departments are only getting exactly what they need. We use the power of the auditor to come in and look at programs where money is coming out, make sure that that money is going where it needs to go, and we can rein in the budget that way. We've also got consumables in our budget that didn't get used, and our current legislators should be looking at that. That we could save a lot of money with that. And then less regulation, which our small businesses are struggling because they cannot run their businesses the way that they want to. I don't agree with a state income tax, a head tax, or a GPS tracking gas tax. And I think we can save money by cutting college presidents, vice presidents, and their administrative staff by 25, 20, and 15%. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Caldier, 1 minute.
Thank you. Yes, the most pressing need is our $8.8 billion revenue shortfall, and that's actually $4.5 billion for the 2021 biennium. And because Democrats and the governor have decided that we are not allowed to go back into special session, then in January it will be very critical to address this, because we will only have 1 year or less than 1 year to recover that $4.5 billion. We should have gone back to special session in July and paused a lot of the new programs. I'm the only one who is a small business owner. I understand what small businesses are facing right now, and I understand what it will take in order to turn our state around. I also serve on the Appropriations Committee, which is the budget committee. So my input is integral during this next upcoming session. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy Stanford for 1 minute.
Oh, do I respond still, or do we go to the next question? I'm sorry.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Alicia Beeler, you're first. And this is a question, a number of questions have come in. There's a great deal of interest here. This question, Alicia, COVID-19 has highlighted extreme inequities, especially in BIPOC communities in all categories, including but not limited to housing, healthcare, employment, education? What will you do to address the systemic and institutional racism that continues to support these gaps? Alicia Beeler for 2 minutes.
Well, I think it's important that we are looking at all avenues in creating equality throughout the 26th. I've been seeing some Democrats and even some Republicans, they're using this crisis to push climate change. And I think that we should be focusing on other areas. Our economy is so important right now, and that's important for everyone. We have to get people stabilized, get them in houses, and that goes back to my plan of less regulation. We have a housing crisis, and we're facing people with a lot of homelessness issues, and we need to get our houses up quicker. And we do that by giving control back to our local governments, letting them zone how they want to, and that starts with getting rid of the Growth Management Act. Let them zone, they know their area, that is their communities, they know it best, the commissioners, the mayors, everyone in there that is working for their constituents. So, you know, I think it's important that we're providing rural healthcare coverage, and I think that the current stuff that we have now just isn't, it's not numbers based enough to be able to give those people the kind of treatment that they need, or be able to access that type of treatment. Most of the 26 is rural areas, so we need to be addressing that. That's going to create more equality in the area, and I think that's very important right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Stanford, you're next for 1 minute.
You repeat the question, please?
Okay. This was just sent in, so let me go back to it. COVID-19 has highlighted extreme inequities, especially in BIPOC communities, in all categories, including but not limited to housing, healthcare, employment, education. What will you do to address the systemic and institutional racism that continues to support these gaps?
We do have systemic racism throughout every system in our country and here in Washington State. I currently serve on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee within the school district. And for me, it's continuing to work with that group in our educational system so that we're starting to bring forth some change around curriculum, making sure that we're including all cultures, all voices when you're talking about history, when you're talking about mathematics, when you're talking about science. Also, too, when it comes to housing, we want to make sure that we're having hard conversations around making sure we're not discriminating against folks. That's either race-based or socioeconomically, making sure that we're not doing that. And I want to continue the work that I've already put in place and having the difficult conversations that need to be had in order to bring about equality and equity for all citizens here in the 26th Legislative District.
Thank you. Michelle Caldier, 1 minute. You're muted.
There we go.
Michelle.
Yes, I got it. Well, thank you for that question. There was kind of a lot packed into the question. I will say that the Democrat Speaker of the House appointed me on 3 critical committees. One is the Poverty Workforce Shortage Committee. Another one is the Children's Mental Health Work Group. And a third one is for addressing racial disparities in foster care. And all 3 of those address some of the racial inequities that we have in our state. And so I am part of that work group to address some of those things. I grew up in foster care, and so making sure that we are protecting our most vulnerable is something that is very critical to me. It's something that I have continually fought for. And with these upcoming budget cuts, that is something that I will continue to do, is to make sure that we are not cutting services for our most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you'll start. We're reversing order here and rotating. You're going to have 2 minutes, followed by Alicia, and then Beeler, and then Joyce Stanford. And the question is, with the passage of I-976 affecting transportation budgets, what do you see as the priorities for the 26th legislative district infrastructure, and how would you fund them?
So what's interesting is that with the passage of I-976, which, by the way, was overwhelmingly passed by people. So a little history on that is that when the what is it? I call it the fancy train that is being built along the I-5 corridor. When that was passed, a lot of people didn't understand how much the taxes were going to go up. And what we saw that voters said, hey, I do not want my taxes to go up this high. And what they did was they decided to put together and say, hey, we want the $30 car tabs, and that passed. It did not affect all of our infrastructure. And so a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, it totally affected our entire infrastructure. It did not. That is something that the taxpayers have supported, and I support as well. I do believe that we need to make sure that with these upcoming potential toll hikes that we're looking at, because the ridership was down, that we do need to work together to offset those. We need to address some of the congestion that we currently have within Gorst, Purdy, and also in Gig Harbor. And those are going to be very difficult in order to address. But right now, we do not have some of the infrastructure problems that were put forward when that was coming down the pike. With the transportation budget that we had last year, what the governor did was he line item vetoed sections to prioritize fish culverts in the budget. And that was unconstitutional. That was something that both Republicans and Democrats came together to file a lawsuit against the governor, because what he was doing was unconstitutional. It just came back.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, Alicia, 1 minute on that question, please.
Hi, so the people completely passed that I-976, and I think it's important that we honor the will of the voters. That's why we have the election system that we have and the way that we do things. So to address the makeup, if we do get our $30 car tabs, and hopefully we do because we voted for it, we can find other ways to fund it. Our government is so big and the budget is so overbloated. There's so many things we can cut to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy Stanford, 1 minute for that question, please.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's going to be important for the representative from the 26 to go in there and champion and protect and fight to keep tolls low on the Narrows Bridge, and make sure that we are getting the transportation dollars that we need in order to fund the projects that we need here. We have not gotten that over the last 6 years, and so I think that's going to be very important to go in there and fight for whatever dollars we can come up with. But we've also got to bring about some progressive revenue in order to make sure we have that. Again, we're going back to stabilizing our economy first, and then working out whatever kind of monies and dollars that we can spread out throughout Washington State. And for me, I'll be fighting for the $26 here, transportation dollars here. And I think that's going to be very important.
Thank you, Joy. And I'm going to let you start on the next question, which is related, Joy, and then Alicia, and then Michelle. Drilling down, what solution for the SR3, SR15, Gorst traffic issues will you propose or support?
Again, that's that. Oh,
go ahead, Joy. You have 2 minutes.
Was that the end of the question?
That is the end of the question. Yeah.
I think that's going to be us fighting to make sure that we get the dollars that we need. We're not going to know. I'm hoping in the HEROES Act there's money for that, but we're just not going to know that until we get there. it's going to be very important for us to make sure that we are turning around our tax code and making sure that we're looking at that. I know there's going to be a tax question. I'll probably say the same thing, but I think fighting for the dollars, the transportation dollars that we need in order to either widen that area. We've done it a little bit so far, but we definitely need to make sure we're also getting where are our dollars for public transportation. I think that's also going to be an interesting fact. And then how come we don't have a carpool lane all the way from Gig Harbor around to Bangor? I think that's another way to do that, to make sure that we are taking advantage of all the resources that we can. And I think we could get extra resources that way by building a carpool lane throughout there. So it's going to be public transportation, it's going to be carpool lane, it's going to be making sure that we've got all the dollars that we need to start funding here in the 26. I don't understand why we haven't gotten that the last 6 years. I know some votes were taken that maybe everyone did not agree with. So I'm going to just fight for every dollar I can for folks here in the 26. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia and then Michelle for 1 minute on that question.
Hi, so we're facing a huge increase of people right now. We've got an Amazon warehouse about to go in across from the Bremerton Airport, and we have billions of dollars about to go into the Naval Puget Sound shipyard. So this issue should have been addressed like 10 years ago, and it hasn't been. We need a third lane through Gig Harbor. We need the Walachit exit fixed. It's a death trap. We need some kind of bypass to get through Gorst. If there's a way we can connect 302 to 3 and 16, that would be fantastic. But we need to do something. We need to address it now because it's only getting worse. Traffic is increasing. People want time with their families, and all this does is take that time away. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Caldier, 1 minute.
So there's a short-term solution that will help fix some of the issues, but then really the long-term fix will be a heavy lift. And so for the short-term solution, one of the things that you've noticed with COVID is that one of the benefits is actually that our traffic has slowed down. And so one of the things that I will be promoting is allowing businesses, giving them flexibility and giving them incentives to have flexibility for people to work at home and helpfully reduce the number of people that are on the road. The second piece is that the worker driver buses are incredible in terms of helping offset the number of shipyard workers that are parking down there. So I would absolutely support investments into that infrastructure. For the long-term solution, we did put money into the budget for a study, and that came back. And some of those projects were put into the transportation budget that I mentioned earlier that the governor line item vetoed. And so this is something because his priority was fish culverts. It was not congestion. And this is something I'll continue to fight for. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, Alicia, you're going to be first for this next question for 2 minutes, then Joy, and then Michelle. The question is, do you think housing first is a successful approach to addressing homelessness? And if so, what actions would you propose to implement this approach, including funding and timelines for projects? If not, what alternatives would you propose? Alicia, for 2 minutes.
So like I said before, I'm sorry. Like I said before, Nala. I apologize.
Okay.
Sometimes the dogs are worse than the kids. So and I lost my train of thought because that was really embarrassing.
Is housing first a successful approach to addressing homelessness, and if so, what actions would you take?
Okay, so like I said before, we're facing a housing crisis, so we need to get something done quickly, and that includes less regulation on our construction workers. We pay thousands of dollars for permits, and then they have, 15 inspections that they have to get done. And I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we can do things online. We can take pictures. We can, our contractors can look at the project, send the pictures to the inspectors, and they can approve it to move on. So there's ways we can do it without the government regulation that stifles the fastness that a house is built. So, and I also think that we have a problem with our mental health issues, and we need to address that as well, because that is one of the root causes of our homeless problem here in the 26th. There are steps that can be taken to where we are putting in more beds for people with mental health issues. Right now we have 16 beds in Kitsap County, and once they're stabilized on their meds in there, by state law, they have to cut them loose. We have to get them stabilized before they go back out there and can be productive members of society without going back to what it was, where they weren't taking their meds, where they, just get them stabilized, and get it going. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Joy Sanford, 1 minute on that question.
Yes, I do agree with housing first, but it's also we need to just buckle down and start creating safe, affordable housing for folks. I think it's going to be imperative that we start collaborations between public and private entities. I think we need to take advantage of empty buildings, whether that's schools, whether that's motels or hotels, and rehabbing those. I think a great step has been in Kitsap, creating, I think it's called Pendleton Place, for permanent supportive housing. That's a great way to get people on the road to permanent housing. And then I work for Shared Housing Services out of Tacoma, where we service the entire Pierce County, and we're matching up people to share safe, affordable housing. So it's creating that affordable housing, that multi-level, multi-income level housing for folks of all different incomes, so that we have that available. We're not gonna be able to start that right away. We already know that. So let's take it to shared housing, to rehabbing existing buildings, and getting rooms rented and apartments rented and houses rented.
Thank you. Michelle, 1 minute on that question.
So housing first, I've heard some successes in Utah. However, Washington State is not Utah. So I always look and say, okay, so what is it we can do with Washington State? And this is one of the things that we've addressed with the poverty workforce shortage task force, is that basically we're having more people coming into our state than we have housing available for. And that is one of the main issues. The other one is that the Growth Management Act has made it so we have stifled the ability for people to develop. And if you look at the city of the map of Port Orchard or the map of Bremerton, you'll see that basically the cities have annexed property rich areas, and they've left property poor areas in that they will not integrate. So we need to fix the Growth Management Act. In addition, the shared housing service that Joy had mentioned, I actually put forward a bill to allow them to get a competitive grant programming for these programs, because you get a bang for your buck. It's only $1,000 on average to get people a home. So
thank you, Michelle. All right, Michelle, we're going to let you start the next question. What is your position on single-payer health care for all Washingtonians? If you don't support it, or until we have it, how will you work to ensure adequate health care for all Washingtonians?
So thank you for that question. So if you look at some of the issues that we've had with the Employment Security Department, for example, so a lot of people say, hey, the government does such a great job with XYZ, that maybe we could expand it so that the government does a better job for everybody. And there are many people that before the pandemic said, hey, I filed a complaint or a claim with the Employment Security Department. They processed the claim quickly. I think that they're functioning adequately. We have seen with this COVID-19 pandemic, what one government agency, if they are in charge of taking care of our entire state, where the flaws are. And we can see it actually in multiple areas. I mean, one of the areas that I worked on was foster care reform. And we didn't have that many kiddos in foster care. And we were having kids falling through the cracks over and over and over again. And so I do not trust our government to take care of our healthcare system. I do support having checks and balances in place, having multiple options for providing for people to have getting health care. Before the Affordable Care Act, my daughter and I, we were on private insurance. And even though we did have an $8,000 deductible, it covered preventative services, and it was only $104 a month. Nowadays, people would do anything for $104 a month premium because that was without subsidies. Right now, we are heavily subsidizing the care, and we're also looking at a freight train coming through because the feds are going to back away from the funding that they're supplementing for our state. So we are looking at huge revenue problems with our current system that we have. I do not trust our government to take care of our entire healthcare system. So I'm opposed to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, you're next for 1 minute, followed by Alicia Beeler on that question. Joy.
Well, we already know that 5 million folks lost their health care during this pandemic. And I'm sure several thousand of those folks are here in Washington State because it was tied to their employment. I think single payer is definitely a option that we have that we can expand on. Medicare is great, but Medicare has its issues, and we need to make Medicare good before we start thinking about trying to do another one. But I think we could do another one alongside that. I think Washington State has the opportunity to be a leader in this type of healthcare. And I think Eileen Cody's Cascade Care is a great start to that. Anybody wants to look that up, it's called Cascade Care. I think that's a great start. I think we can expand on that as we move forward out of this pandemic.
Thank you. Alicia Beeler for 1 minute.
So single payer healthcare is a failed model, and it's only going to hurt our most vulnerable populations. Growing the government doesn't help anyone. The big government intervention that people are pushing for does nothing for the 26th. Like I said, we're a rural industry, and this only helps the urban areas. The people out in like Key Center, they're not getting access to medical. We need to make it available to them. We need a rural delivery system that'll help people that don't have access to healthcare that is right near them. They have to drive all the way to Tacoma or, Seattle. So big government makes our rural community residents travel twice as far to get any care. And the measurables of these bigger government healthcare plans is that it only works in the urban areas. It fosters a system of big government when what we need is a smaller government with private market competitiveness to reduce the cost of healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, we'll let you go first on this next question, followed by Michelle and then Alicia. The question is, what environmental protections need consideration and legislation? Are there protections you believe should be repealed, and why?
Repeat that for me one more time, Noelle.
What environmental protections need consideration and legislation? Are there protections you believe should be repealed, and why?
I'll answer, I believe we need to make sure that we have clean air and water. Absolutely, that's what we need to be protecting, the clean air and clean water here. We've got a wonderful ecosystem here in the 26. We've got great outdoor space that we need to be protecting. I don't know about repealing any of them, so much as we need to protect everything that we have in place right now. I'm still working through on my environmental subject matter. So that's going to be my answer for now. Thank you.
Michelle Caldier for a minute, please.
Oh, absolutely. The number one thing that we need to focus on is preventing raw sewage from going into our beautiful Puget Sound. So over and over again, we have had either King County has dumped, the Navy has dumped, but hundreds of millions of gallons of raw sewage. So when King County dumped 250 million gallons of raw sewage into our beautiful Puget Sound, it was a $116,000 fine. So that would be equivalent to $2 or $1 for every 2,000 gallons of raw sewage being dumped into our beautiful Puget Sound. And all of the environmental efforts, I don't know why, but somehow straws took the airwaves and everyone focused on straws when we have a real problem. It's raw sewage getting dumped in. They just got done dumping in last year. It was 4.5 million gallons. King County has done it over and over and over again. We will find them. We need to put money into the infrastructure to fix the problem, but we need to increase the fines and we need to make it so that they're held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, 1 minute, please.
You know, this is an issue in Bremerton, in the Sinclair Inlet. Every time there is a hard rain, we get that sewage runoff and it needs to be fixed. We're going to end up killing all of our sea life if we don't get it fixed. And that is important. That is, the environmentalists should be jumping on that. I don't understand why they're not. We have things going in, the culverts going in that is, you know, worked against our traffic. And if we can get the bypass built in Gorst, we will be able to cut down on the amount of traffic that's going through there, because people will be able to just cut by that. That's a salmon run right there, and we need to protect that. So I think it's important that we do that, and we need to address all of them. I can't think of any. Well, actually, there's a few I would repeal, but I don't have it right off the top of my head. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, you're going to be next, first for the next question. As quite a few questions are coming in by text. Remember, okay. Okay. Sorry. Technical difficulties with the text. Okay, Alicia, this is a question about mask wearing. What do you think is the importance of mask wearing, and do you always wear masks in public places?
So I think that there's certain areas where it is relevant to wear masks, and if people want to wear one, they should protect themselves. We need to be protecting our most vulnerable populations. And for those that have health issues, they should continue to shelter in place. The shutdown didn't work, as is evidenced by the science that the highest rates came in states that locked down. Getting herd immunity is very important in moving forward. And I worry that the mask mandate is actually giving people a false sense of security. And listen, I know that you love that big government in the solution, but forcing a lockdown has created a situation that has destabilized our most vulnerable by shutting down the economy. Thank you.
Michelle, 1 minute.
Thank you for that. So as a dentist, I wore masks all the time when I was taking care of my patients. It's a requirement to do so. One of the problems that I have with the mask mandate that the governor implemented is that he did not take into consideration the people. And when I say that, I think that when you strongly encourage people to be wearing masks and you do education for people as to why it is important, then I think you will have higher compliance. When you implement something and you threaten to throw someone in jail for 90 days, when we do not have the ability to enforce that. So any legislation that comes down the pike, we always take into consideration how many people will refuse to comply and what the cost would be. So threatening to throw people in jail for 90 days for not wearing a mask, in my opinion, is a very poor way to address this. I think most people do not want to get COVID, and I think that we need to work with the public and figure out what we can do to make them safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, for 1 minute, please.
Yes, I think it's imperative. This isn't a political issue. This is a health and human issue. We saw the numbers were low when we were shut down, when we had folks wearing masks, when we had folks social distancing. And as soon as we eased up just a little, our numbers started spiking again, both in Kitsap and in Pierce County. Particularly Pierce County, I saw today, had something like over 70 new cases. So I think it's imperative to wear a mask anytime you're out and about. I myself do. I'm high risk because I have a compromised immune system. So I'm making sure I have my mask on. I'm still socially distancing even when I'm around other folks. And I'm making sure I'm not in crowds of 20 or 30 people. We're talking less than 7, if any. But I think that it's imperative, and I think we need to stop making it a political issue and make it a human and health issue. And I did not see anywhere where people were going to be arrested. So I'm going to have to look that up.
Thank you. Joy, you're next for this question for 2 minutes, followed by Alicia and Michelle. Joy, do you support going to year-round or balanced year calendar schools? Why or why not?
I think this is going to have to be a hybrid. I would be all for year-round school to get the kids caught up on what they needed to be caught up on. But I also think folks are going to have to be given a choice to have their kids come back to school because of this pandemic. I would support year-round school if it had everything attached to it that we needed. I think right now our kids may need that, but parents and grandparents and guardians need to make sure that they can revolve their schedule around a schedule like that. I know we were talking about coming back in a hybrid model for our school year here in the Peninsula School District and in other school districts around the state. I think that's a great idea, but I also think as we're bringing those kids back, we have in place safety measures and health measures that's going to keep teachers, administrators, and students healthy and safe from this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, 1 minute.
Hi, so I don't actually agree with the year-long school, and I like the hybrid model that they're coming back with. I actually am thinking about homeschooling my children, but in South Kitsap, they're going to be doing 2 days a week for 2nd grade through 12th grade in the school at a 50% capacity, and then the rest of the time will be online. So I mean, while I like that model, I think our schools could open back up and our kids should be back in school. There were 0 deaths yesterday in Pierce County. The numbers just came out today. So I think it's important that we get our kids back in school. They need that emotional health that they get from their peers. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, 1 minute.
So I serve on the education committee, and I can tell you one size does not fit all. So we have 295 school districts. Some school districts, such as Seattle School District, are over 50,000 students. Another school district, Stehekin, is as small as only 7 school children in that school district. So I believe it should be done based off of the community, based off of what the needs are in the community. And unfortunately, once again, the governor and the superintendent of public instruction has put forward mandates for the schools that I believe that the legislature should convene in order to work those things together. Some of them do not make sense. So for example, you have to stay 6 feet apart. You can't use partitions in a classroom. They're going to deep clean it after every time, and you have to wear a mask. However, if you're on a bus, you can be cramped together. Don't have to do the six foot distancing as long as the windows roll down. So it doesn't quite make sense. I think that we need a comprehensive look at things instead of a legislating in a vacuum. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you'll be next, first for the next question, followed by Joy, and then Alicia. The question is, according to the Washington State Budget and Policy Center, Washington households with low or middle incomes pay 6 times more in state and local taxes as a share of their income than the wealthiest 1% of households, making our tax system the most regressive in the nation. What legislation would you propose or support to make our tax system more equitable?
Thank you for that question. So, as you know, within our state's history, actually over the last 30 years, we have had one party control for the majority of the time for over 2 decades. And that has been the House, the Senate, the governorship have been controlled by Democrats. And this is something that Democrats push every single year that, oh my gosh, we need to have a more equitable tax structure. However, they've had the opportunity. They had the opportunity last year to do this. They did not do it. And I'll tell you why. It's because just like when we reformed how we fund K through 12 education, that it is far more complex than what you would ever think. And there are winners and losers. And it is very difficult to do. I would support an overhaul of our entire tax code. However, the proposals that have been put in place of a quote unquote less regressive tax has been a income tax, a payroll tax, a capital gains tax. Those are things that are in addition to the existing tax structure that we currently have. They will not be replacing any tax structure. I do not support any of those. And in addition, the capital gains tax and the state income tax, those will be challenged in court. So you cannot, with our revenue loss, we cannot rely on that revenue. So if that is the proposal that Democrats are putting forward, it's not realistic. What is realistic is what Frank Chop has just proposed, which is a former Speaker of the House, and that is to put a payroll tax on businesses. And the problem with that is that with all of the unemployment claims that we are looking at, the average business is looking at $1,000 per person per year increase in their unemployment benefits that they have to pay out. So businesses are already struggling. Now is not the time for new taxes. So I do not support the new taxes that are proposed. Thank you.
Joy Stanford for 1 minute.
I've not heard of any that have been proposed as yet. I know there are some ideas that are floating. And while in the short term, we need to make some difficult decisions, the long term, we should not only make sure we are recovering from the impacts of this COVID, but we rebuild that system that creates a more equitable outcome and ensures that all basic needs are met, which means we need to flip the tax structure right side up. It's upside down right now. Let's flip it right side up. Let's look at those obsolete tax loopholes on large corporations. Let's look at if our top 1% and 2% folks are paying their share into the system so that we can keep the needed safety nets of social services together. Those are some of the things that we're going to need to look at. And really, everything's on the table as we go back in 2021, and we're just going to have to make hard decisions. And it's not going to be easy, but I think we can fight and be fair about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Alicia, 1 minute.
So the biggest economic growth we've had came from President Trump with his payroll tax reduction. And that helped our state trade and has impacted our local economies in ways that nothing else has. So locally, what we can do is we can restructure our B&O tax. Right now, they're getting taxed on their gross income, and it really shouldn't be that way. It needs to be what they're putting out above and beyond that, and that's what they're getting taxed on. This is going to help the middle class insanely. Our small business owners that employ people in the community will be able to pay their employees more if they do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, you can go next. First for the next question, then Michelle, and then Joy. Are there services provided by government agencies that you believe would be more appropriately provided by private agencies? Are there services currently provided by private agencies that you believe could be provided more efficiently by government agencies? Alicia, for 2 minutes.
Hi, so I absolutely do. We create a competition in private industries. That's the private market. That's how it operates. That's capitalism. When the government takes over, it's just a bigger, bloated government. And honestly, it's so insanely large that there's so much that could be cut. I think that, oh my gosh, I'm losing my train of thought here. Um, can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Are there services provided by government agencies that you believe would be more appropriately provided by private agencies, or vice versa? Are there services by private agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes to the medical field too. Or not the medical field, but the medical insurance field. By creating competition with them, we are able to lower the price of it. And that could go across state lines. Right now, we can't go across state lines. And I think that would drive down the cost of healthcare for people. And that's really important right now with COVID going on. So for me, the less government we have involved is better. It's better for everyone. The founders intended for us to have a small, limited government, and that's what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, 1 minute.
Thank you for that question. So one of the problems that we've had with school construction, because as we all know, it's incredibly high, that is that there are certain entities called educational school districts where they will get the bid, and it will not go out for a bid to private entities, and they will increase the costs and then take kickbacks. And I had a whistleblower who came to me and he said, hey, this is ridiculous because it's increasing the cost of school construction. So I I requested for an attorney general's opinion. We just got that back. And there has already been state law where after $100,000, they are supposed to be bidding out for those jobs. They were not doing so. And so now with this AG opinion, that will be moving forward so that these construction jobs will be bid out to the private market, so we can hopefully get construction costs down for schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, for 1 minute.
Sorry about that. So when I hear private public, I think privatizing our post office and privatizing other things like that. And we do not want that. I want to keep our post office the way it is. We've got great workers. We've got a great system there. They've got, I believe, a great union there. So I think that that's going to be important to do that. We are working really hard. I know in Pierce and Kitsap County, I'm on several different phone calls a week with providers who are giving services to folks, our vulnerable population of folks, and they are doing it the right way. To bring government into that would not be the way to go. Let's keep our providers that are doing it the right way. Let's keep them in place, whether they're governmental agencies or not. We need to keep them where they are and let them do the work that they've been doing all along.
Thank you. Joy, we're going to let you start off with this next question, followed by Alicia and then Michelle. And the question is, in the 2020 legislative session, Senate Bill 5395 was passed, which requires school districts to provide comprehensive sexual health education to each student by the 2022-2023 school year. Mm-hmm. This bill allows parents and guardians to excuse their child from this instruction and to review curriculum. Do you support the current effort to repeal this bill? If so, why? If not, why not? Joy.
No, I do not support the repeal of that. 60% of our current school districts are using that curriculum. It was about bringing the other 40% on to do that. It was also about personal safety, stranger danger, good touch, bad touch for our kids, and educating them in a science-based, medically educational way. I think information is power. And if we give the information that lets our young people make better decisions around their sexual beings, their lives, their bodies, I think it is detrimental that folks are going around saying we're going to be showing porn to our children in school. That's not going to happen. The information that is being put out there is being skewed. There's information that goes to our teachers, and then there's information that the teachers can take and make curriculum. That curriculum is based on each school district can create their own curriculum based on the information that was given to the OSPI. So you take that curriculum, you bring together your school district, your parents, your administrators, your teachers, your health teachers to create curriculum around that. Everybody has the freedom to opt out. I want to have the freedom to opt in to make sure that my child does have that kind of education. Do not take my freedom away to have my child learn this. I won't take your freedom away to have your child opt out. And this language is stronger in this bill to have parents opt out their child. So I am all for this because it's information, and information is power for our young people.
Thank you. Alicia?
Except that the OSPI mandates which curriculum that the school districts are going to use. We really need to get control back into our local school districts. I worked very hard to get signatures with R90 to get it on the ballot, which we did, and we had the highest amount of signatures of any ballot measure in the state of Washington ever. It's not appropriate for any age, and this is exactly why they put a disclaimer on the images when it was shown in the legislature. Look, it's just normalizing the pleasure a person receives with sex, and which is it's fine for an adult, but not for kids. It promotes grooming ideologies that are present with sex offenders. I see this. I've seen this my entire career in the criminal justice field for 15 years as a professional. And it teaches our children about things they don't need to know at these ages. And I don't believe this type of legislation should be a product of our government. And it's not something that should be taught in schools. Instead of the opt-out option, parents should be able to opt in, just like Joyce said. I don't want my children learning this X-rated stuff.
Thank you. Michelle Caldier for a minute.
Yes. So usually when we have a controversial bill, they'll put together a task force of bipartisan folks. And instead, they delegated that to the OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. And the work group that he put together did not have any dissenting views on this curriculum. So you had a group of people who were all like-minded, and they created the what was going to be in this bill. In addition, so that was the first problem. So I worked with the OPR, the Office of Public Research, in order to actually look at the curriculum. I can understand why people were upset with the curriculum that I saw. I did not see the pornographic images in the curriculum. However, there were still many things that were in there that I would not want taught to my child. I can understand why they did that. There were over 1,000 people who came to testify. There were over 20,000 people who live streamed it while we were on the floor at 2 o'clock in the morning. We are here to represent the public. So it is horrible that a bunch of legislators ignored the public.
Thank you.
And I believe that they should have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Michelle, you're going to go first for the next question, followed by Joy, and then Alicia. With the minority vote being crucial to winning the campaign, given the growing diverse population in the district, what will you do to further equity, diversity, and inclusion in the community if elected?
So, like I said before, the Democrat Speaker of the House has appointed me to looking at some of the racial disparities that we have in foster care. I was in foster care when I was younger, and I'm also a foster parent, and that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm also on the poverty workforce group, as well as the children's mental health workforce group, and those are also things that we're looking at. In addition, one of the things that I think we should have when it comes to some of the things that have hit the news recently is I support having body cams. I think that that was legislation that came through, that there were a lot of sticking points in terms of what should be subject to public disclosure, because you have some serious privacy issues. So for example, if you have a loved one who passed away, are those images something that you want the entire public to see? And I think that the legislature should be able to come together and figure those things out. I think it should be available to the families, and if the families choose to release those to the public, then that's their choice. the other thing that I would also support is that in certain areas, because you know, in Kitsap County, it is not very diverse. And I think that for certain crimes, I believe that we should allow a statewide jury pool so that people could, let's say that they're in Kitsap County or in Pend Oreille County, that they have the option of requesting a statewide jury pool for certain crimes, because the jury does not resemble their peers. It just doesn't. And that is something that I would absolutely support and absolutely push. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, for 1 minute.
Recently, we were talking about this around pay equity. So I think for me, I believe we need to get more data broken down by race and gender. So that would give more equity around women, around race, and transparency by employers about the pay gaps that exist. Also think our educational system needs to be reformed to where we're talking about more cultural, diverse folks within history, within science, within each subject matter in our educational system. Those are just some of the ideas that I have around making sure we're having these hard conversations. When you have racism thrown in your face every day, like I have, you know what conversations to have. And they're tough, they're not easy, but I think we can make this better. And I think that has started with the Black Lives Movement and with the environment that we're currently in our communities. So I'm hoping to just keep this conversation going.
Thank you. Alicia, for 1 minute.
So our courts already allow for a change of venue if requested to the judge. The judge can rule on that. So in the United States, we were founded on the notion of an unalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we're all entitled to. That is a God-given right. And all men are created equal, and that is important. Now, I will agree with Joy on the Black Lives Matter movement. It's important, but I don't agree with their Marxist ideologies that have been put out by their founders. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, you could be next. First for the next question. Followed by Michelle and then Joy. If elected, what would you do to pass legislation to address climate change?
Sorry, there we go. So I don't think that that's something we need to be looking at right now. We're coming into an economic crisis and we need to be focusing on that. The climate change, that can be addressed later. Right now, we have bigger issues to deal with and they need to be dealt with now. We have a growing homeless population. We have insane amounts of traffic, and we have people that are not getting the services they need in the 26th. They're not getting the representation they need. We need to bring back representation to the 26th and do the things that we need here in the 26th. We need to stop worrying about the I-5 corridor and get stuff done here in the 26th legislative district. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, 1 minute, please.
So I think probably the biggest thing when it comes to environmental issues is that we need to address the sewage spills that are going on. Those are real things. Those are bipartisan. I will tell you that on my side of the aisle, we will support funding for fixing some of the infrastructure. I also believe that we need to hold these entities responsible and increasing the fines, as well as figuring out a way to prevent that from happening. Because at the end of the day, that you know, people always talk about wanting clear water, and I get all these people in my office, and I always ask them. I say, "Well, I see that straws are on there, but what about the sewage?" And I really believe that that is one of the biggest problems that we have with our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, for 1 minute.
Someone said to me, there's no economies on a dead planet. We only have 11 years left, people. This is important. I would like to work to move and reallocate our resources away from fossil fuel and non-clean resources. And I would advocate for using those resources and expanding wind and solar. operations, but I also want to phase that in because we don't want to take jobs away from folks. We want to make sure we have a just transition. So we're transitioning those folks that have those current jobs over to those great jobs that are more clean and energy efficient for our environment, for our community, and for our planet. So,
Thank you. Joy, we're going to start you off on the next question, followed by Michelle and then Alicia. And Joy, your question is, as a state legislator, what legislation would be your priority to address the ongoing public health crisis due to COVID-19?
First and foremost, we want to make sure that we've made a good recovery. Our public health system needs to be put back together. So we're making sure we have the resources we need for our frontline workers, for our nurses, for everybody who's out there fighting, janitors, nurses, workers at the grocery store, all those folks, making sure we've got the PPE resources that we need, face masks, gloves, all of those things. I think that's going to be vitally important for us to do that. That's the legislation that I would fight for as far as our public health system goes. We also need to make sure that we're thinking about that crisis that may come in the future. We need to be better prepared and not doing crisis reactionary mode instead of being able to just say, okay, we've trained for this, we know what's going to happen, here's what we need to do, and putting together a plan so that we're not caught off kilter again is going to be vitally important. But for me, first and foremost, it's going to be those PPEs, making sure our public health system has those PPEs, ventilators, beds, making sure folks are ready. We just were not ready for this crisis, and I want to make sure we are the next time.
Thank you. Michelle, for 1 minute.
So there isn't just one piece of legislation because COVID has impacted pretty much every single industry, and not only trying to figure out how we're going to basically live with this, because I think that this is going to be around for a long period of time. I think it is going to be similar like influenza, where it comes back every year. We need to figure out what is it we can do while we're living with it. I think of COVID kind of like the elephant in the room, where you could have 10 different people with their eyes closed touching 10 different parts of the elephant. They're in many ways correct with their perception. However, we have to look at it as a whole. And that's why we need to have legislative input. What someone in Garfield is dealing with, Garfield County, where there's never been a single COVID case, they don't perceive this to be a problem. Someone who's 80 really is gravely concerned about getting COVID. However, there's people who are in their 30s and 40s who just have a new family and are struggling to survive. And so not having employment is a huge issue to them. So we need to look at this as a whole, and it needs to be done comprehensively. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, for 1 minute.
So we flattened the curve. That was the goal in the beginning. And then all of a sudden the goal lines, they keep getting moved back. And
Because
we flattened the line. It's increasing now because they're doing more tests. They're including tests every day that a person is positive. This is not science. We need to open back up. We need to get our families back to work so they can put food on their tables and they can take care of their families. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this will be the last question. Michelle, you're going to go first, then Alicia, followed by Joy. What role does the legislature play in creating living wage jobs in Washington state?
Well, actually, the legislature plays a huge role. And one of the things that we look at is not just what the minimum amount is and how much money you're actually making, but it's also the cost of living. So as housing prices have gone up, as rents have gone up, it has made it so that regardless of whatever the whatever people are making, that people are struggling right now. And so we need to look at multiple factors, not just the amount of money that people are making, but also what to do to offset the costs. And so one of the things that we had talked about was fixing the Growth Management Act and making it so that cities are able to annex parts of the county without, and possibly making it so that they have a greater time span to where they have to provide services, so that we can at least get construction going, so that it can offset what the demand is, and we can help reduce costs there. One of the other pieces that I've been fighting for is reduction in healthcare costs, because those have also been increasing. So what I did was I worked across the aisle with Representative Sherry Appleton and Senator Christine Rolfes, and we had whistleblowers who came to us who said that CHI Franciscan had basically taken over an entire monopoly in our region, and the second that they took it over, they increased costs by almost double digits for many services, and for some services it was over double what the cost would have been. They refused to allow people to go to an ambulatory surgical center. We worked with the Attorney General's office. It was the first ever class action lawsuit with regards to having a monopoly in the area. They won that lawsuit, and this is something that I am continually fighting for, is making sure that our costs are lower as we are trying to fix our state's budget and economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alicia, for 1 minute.
Look, so we're gonna have to suffer the next couple years, because we are facing such a huge shortfall that we need to let the small businesses do their thing. They need to have more control. Michelle's right. We need to get rid of the Growth Management Act, not just change it. We need to get rid of it. We need to put the control back in local government's hands. Our commissioners and our mayors and our city councils, they know the area better than anyone else. And so that is what we need to do for this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Stanford for 1 minute.
Yep, it said a strong workforce is the foundation of a solid economy. So if that's true, we need to make sure that we're bringing back and creating jobs through construction and transportation, so that we keep our economy here in Washington State moving right along. We want to make sure we have a strong educational system and options for our kids coming out of school who may not want to go to four-year college, but that's available to them. We've got a great university system here, but we also have great apprenticeships, jobs, and training that get people to work right away. But that educational system is where they're going to start, and we want to make sure that we're giving them every opportunity that they need to be able to contribute back to our communities.
Thank you. Now it's time for closing statements. Each candidate has up to 1 minute. We'll change the order from the opening statements, and so we begin with Alicia Beeler, then Joyce Stanford, and Michelle Caldier. Alicia.
So thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you for providing the platform. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I intend to provide representation here in the 26th Legislative District. We need someone working for us and not the I-5 corridor so much. I have grassroots support because the community sees that I want to work for them. I've literally and figuratively been working my butt off. I am the endorsed Republican in this race, and for them to endorse a brand new candidate over the incumbent is very telling. I will restore honesty, integrity, respect, and I will never lie to you. I'm Alicia Beeler, and I want to be your vote so that I can work for you. And I want your vote so that I can work for you. You can check out my website at www.aliciabeeler.com. Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you. Joyce Stanford.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, and all who participated in watching and asking questions. Woo! Great questions. I want to be your next state representative. I want to create a better future for Washington and for the 26 legislative districts by working to provide educational opportunities for all students, building a strong and healthy community, and making sure we are creating jobs for that 21st century economy. That means working and fighting for working families, restoring fairness for the middle class, and building a Washington that works for everyone and that is equitable for everyone. I've been endorsed by the News Tribune, as well as many unions and local leaders here in the 26th. I look forward to your vote and your support as we move through this election season.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you so much for attending tonight, and also for the League of Women Voters for putting this forward. I promise to continue to have an open door policy regardless of wherever you stand on the issues. I believe it's my job to listen to everybody, not just vocal people on either the far left or the far right. I am endorsed by the Washington State, or I am supported by the Washington State Republican Party, as well as our House Republican Caucus. And I am also endorsed by several other entities, such as the Association for Washington Business. And I will be the person, you know, I believe my background as a nursing home dentist, as well as a small business owner, is critical in order to turn our state back around. So thank you so much. My phone number is 360-981-VOTE, and my email is michelle@michellecaldier.com. So feel free to email or call anytime. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. In ballot order, the candidates are Michelle Caldier, Joyce Sanford, and Alicia Beeler, candidates for Legislative District 26, House Position 2. Please vote for your choice in the primary election by August 4th. You should have your ballot by July 20th. I would like to thank the timekeeper, Terry Baker, the Tacoma-Pierce County and Kitsap Leagues of Women Voters, and our co-sponsors, American Association of University Women, Central Latino, Eastside Neighborhood Advisory Council of Tacoma, the NAACP, St. Leo Church, Summit Waller Community Association, Tacoma-Pierce Affordable Housing Consortium, Tacoma South End Neighborhood Council, Tacoma Urban League, University of Washington Tacoma School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences, and the YWCA of Pierce County. Please watch for other League of Women Voter candidate forums. They're listed on our website. Again, that's www.tacomapiercelwv.org/2020 elections. Please read your voter's pamphlet. Look at vote411.org, where you can find answers to questions posed to all candidates running for office. Read the candidates' websites, and do all that you can to become an educated voter. And don't forget to vote on August 4th. If mailing your ballot, allow time for it to be postmarked by that date, or use one of the many drop boxes in the area. And thank you to all the candidates and the listeners and all the excellent questions that have come in tonight and previously. Good night to all.